They say the universe has a sense of humor, but I never expected it to manifest as me, a former exotic dancer from Miami standing before the Galactic Council. As humanity's last hope for survival. My name is Valentina Rodriguez, and 3 months ago, I was grinding on poles for rent money. Today, I'm the only thing standing between my species and complete annihilation. The irony isn't lost on me. The Zephyrian ambassador's crystalline form shimmered with what I'd learned was discussed. This creature is what humanity sends to negotiate for their pathetic lives? I adjusted my red dress, the same one I'd worn to my sister's funeral, and smiled. In the 3 months since first contact, I'd learned that my assets meant nothing to these beings. They were beyond physical desire, beyond what they called primitive biological imperatives. But what they couldn't understand was that my body had never been my real weapon. My real weapon was something they'd never encountered in their sterile, logical universe. The human capacity to love something more than yourself. Ambassador, I said, my voice carrying the honey-sweet tone that had once convinced lonely men to empty their wallets. I'm exactly what humanity needs to send. The council chamber was a marvel of impossible architecture, crystalline walls that bent light into rainbows, gravity that shifted to accommodate dozens of alien physiologies, and in the center, being so advanced they transcended evolution itself. The Zephyrians looked like living diamonds. The Mokari resembled massive, floating brains encased in biomechanical shells. The Vorthik were pure energy, barely contained within geometric force fields. And then there was me, 5'6", curves that had paid my bills, and a heart that had been broken more times than I could count. The charges against humanity are severe, intoned the Mokari Prime, its voice resonating directly in my skull. Excessive emotional response, irrational decision-making, dangerous levels of unpredictability. Your species has been deemed incompatible with galactic civilization. I'd heard this speech before during the preliminary hearings. Humanity's crime wasn't war or destruction. It was feeling too much. In a galaxy where every decision was made through pure logic, where emotions were considered a mental illness, humans were seen as dangerously unstable. We've given you one final chance, the Zephyrian continued. Prove that humanity possesses value beyond your chaotic nature. You have 1 hour. 1 hour to save 8 billion lives. The other human representatives had tried logic, presenting our scientific achievements, our art, our potential contributions, all failures. The council saw these as contaminated by emotion, therefore worthless. But I had a different approach. I want to tell you a story, I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber, about the day I learned what it really means to be human. The Mokari Prime's disapproval washed over me like a cold wave. Stories are meaningless fabrications. We require evidence. I interrupted. I know. This story is evidence. I walked to the center of the chamber, my heels clicking against the crystalline floor. Every eye, sensor, and consciousness focused on me. I'd performed for audiences before, but never with stakes this high. 6 months ago, I was working the night shift at Paradise Lost, a gentleman's club in downtown Miami. Not exactly humanity's finest moment, right? Just another girl shaking her ass for money because life dealt her a shitty hand. I could feel their collective disdain, but I pressed on. There was this regular customer, Marcus. Older guy, maybe 60, always sat in the corner nursing the same. Beer all night. Never got private dances. Never caused trouble. The other girls avoided him because he didn't spend money, but something about him, double quotes. I paused, remembering. He had this sadness in his eyes, like he was carrying the weight of the world. Irrelevant emotional observations, the Zephyrian stated. This proves our point exactly, does it? I smiled, because what happened next is why your hyperlogical species will never understand the universe as deeply as we do. I began to move, not dancing exactly, but using my body to tell the story. It's what I'd always done, communicated through movement, through presence. Marcus came in one night, different. His sadness had turned to desperation. He ordered drink after drink, spending money he clearly didn't have. When I asked if he was okay, He broke down, told me his daughter was dying. Cancer. The treatment was experimental, not covered by insurance. He needed $50,000 he didn't have. The chamber was silent now, every being listening despite themselves. The logical response would have been sympathy, maybe some advice about medical financing. That's what your species would do, right? Offer practical solutions. Correct. The Mokari Prime confirmed. Emotional involvement clouds judgment. But I didn't do the logical thing. I continued. I did the human thing. I stopped moving, planting my feet firmly on the crystalline floor. I quit my job that night, emptied my savings account, sold my car, my jewelry, everything I owned. I gave Marcus $43,000, every penny I had in the world. The silence stretched, broken only by the hum of alien technologies. For a complete stranger, I added, a man I'd known for maybe 6 months, who'd never given me anything more than polite conversation. Illogical, the Zephyrian said, but there was something different in its tone. You destroyed your own stability for someone unrelated to your genetic line. Completely illogical. I agreed. And you know what happened next? Marcus's daughter got her treatment. She lived. But more than that, the story spread. Other customers heard about it. Then the local news picked it up, and national media. I started walking again, this time in a tight circle around the chamber's center. Within 2 weeks, strangers from across the country were sending me money. Not because they expected anything in return, but because they understood what I'd done. They recognized something in that illogical act that resonated with their own humanity. Mob mentality, the Mokari Prime dismissed. Collective emotional contagion. Maybe, I said. But here's what your logic can't account for. I didn't just save one little girl. The story inspired others. A businessman in Seattle donated $1 million to children's cancer research. A teacher in Detroit started a fund for families in medical crisis. A retired couple in Oregon began volunteering at hospices. I stopped and faced the council directly. My one illogical act, giving away everything I owned for a stranger, created a chain reaction that saved hundreds of lives. How does your pure logic explain that? The Zephyrian's form flickered. A sign of what I'd learned was deep thought. Statistical anomaly. Emotional contagion cannot be replicated or predicted, can it? I smiled. Let me tell you about the day of first contact. The chamber's atmosphere shifted. This was recent history, something they'd all witnessed. Your ships appeared over every major city on Earth. Humanity's governments went into panic mode. Military forces mobilized. Fear and chaos everywhere. The logical response to an unknown threat, right? Correct. The Vortex energy form pulsed. Standard defensive protocols. But while our leaders were preparing for war, something else was happening. In London, a little girl named Emma walked out of her house and left flowers at the base of your ship. No fear, no logic, just a child's instinct to welcome strangers with a gift. I began to move again, my dress flowing around me like liquid fire. Her mother panicked, ran to drag her back, but Emma just stood there, looking up at your massive ship, and said, "Mama, they must be lonely, coming so far from home." The memory hit me like a physical blow. I'd seen the footage, like everyone else. That little girl, barely 5 years old, standing fearlessly beneath an alien dreadnought. What happened next? I asked the council. Emma's mother didn't drag her away. She knelt down beside her daughter and placed her own flowers next to Emma's. Irrational behavior, the Mokari Prime stated, but its mental voice was quieter now. Within an hour, thousands of people had gathered around your ship, not with weapons, but with flowers, food, music. Children were drawing pictures of your ships. Teenagers were taking selfies with your hulls in the background. Street musicians were playing welcome songs. I spun slowly, addressing each council member in turn. Your scanners detected no hostility, no threat. Just 8 billion beings doing the most illogical thing imaginable, welcoming complete strangers with open hearts. And yet, the Zephyrian said, your military forces remained mobilized. Your governments prepared for conflict. Logic and emotion in direct contradiction. Exactly, I exclaimed. That's the point. Humanity doesn't choose between logic and emotion. We hold both simultaneously. Our leaders prepared for the worst, while our hearts hoped for the best. I stopped moving and faced the council directly. You see that as a flaw, but it's actually our greatest strength. We can calculate risks while still choosing to trust. We can prepare for war while working for peace. We can give away everything we own for a stranger while still planning for our own future. The chamber fell silent again, but this time it felt different. Expectant. You want to know what makes humanity valuable to your galactic civilization? I asked. It's not our technology or our art. It's our capacity for beautiful, illogical choices. I walked to the edge of the chamber, where the crystalline walls met the floor. Every species you've welcomed into your civilization is logical, predictable. They make decisions based on optimal outcomes and efficient resource allocation. But what happens when you encounter something that can't be solved through logic? I pressed my palm against the cold wall, feeling the alien technology humming beneath my touch. What happens when you meet a force that doesn't follow rules or patterns? When you need someone to make a choice that defies every logical calculation? I turned back to face them, my red dress bright against the crystalline backdrop. That's when you need humanity. When you need someone crazy enough to give away everything they own for a stranger. When you need someone who can look at impossible odds and choose love over survival. The Mokari Prime's mental voice was barely a whisper. Elaborate. 3 weeks ago, your own scientists detected an anomaly in the Vega system, a quantum cascade that threatens to destroy not just stars, but the fundamental structure of space-time itself. Your best minds have been working on solutions. I smiled, knowing I was about to drop my biggest bombshell. But every solution requires a sacrifice. Someone has to manually trigger the containment field from inside the cascade. It's certain death, no possibility of survival, no hope of rescue. Pure logic says no rational being would volunteer for certain death to save strangers. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle over the chamber. But humans would. We'd line up for the chance to save people we've never met. Not because it's logical, but because it's right. The Zephyrian's form began to pulse rapidly. You cannot know this. Can't I? I reached into my purse and pulled out a small device. A communicator I'd been given for this exact moment. Admiral Chun, are you receiving? The device crackled to life, and Admiral Chun's voice filled the chamber. Valentina, we're here, all of us. How many volunteers do we have for the Vega mission? Final count is 837,412. That's just the ones with relevant skill sets. If we included everyone who volunteered, the number would be over 200 million. I looked up at the council, feeling tears beginning to form in my eyes. 200 million people willing to die for strangers, for beings they've never met, on worlds they'll never see. This is ... double quotes. The Vorthic's energy form flickered wildly. This is impossible. No, I said softly. This is human. I walked back to the center of the chamber, feeling the weight of destiny settling on my shoulders. You're right about us. We are illogical. We are emotional. We make decisions that don't make sense from a purely rational perspective. But that's exactly why you need us. I stopped and spread my arms wide, encompassing the entire chamber. Your civilization is perfect, logical, efficient, but it's also sterile, predictable. You've eliminated every variable except the most important one, the capacity for impossible choices. The chamber was completely silent now, every being focused on my words. The universe isn't logical. It's chaotic, unpredictable, full of situations that can't be solved through pure reason. When you encounter something that defies your calculations, you'll need someone who can make a choice that defies logic. I took a deep breath, preparing for my final argument. That little girl, Emma, who left flowers for your ships last week, she was diagnosed with the same cancer that nearly killed Marcus's daughter. She's 5 years old, facing death, and you know what she told her parents? My voice cracked slightly. She said, "If I die, will you tell the star people that I was glad to meet them?" The tears came now, and I didn't try to stop them. That's humanity. We face death with gratitude for the chance to love. We give away everything we own for strangers. We volunteer for suicide missions to save people we've never met. We choose hope over logic, love over survival, compassion over efficiency. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand, smearing my makeup. And that's exactly what your perfect, logical civilization lacks. The beautiful illogic of love. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Then slowly, the Mokari Prime's mental voice filled the chamber. The quantum cascade in the Vega system. Our calculations show a 0.003% chance of survival for anyone who attempts manual intervention. I know, I said simply. And you claim 200 million humans would volunteer for certain death? I know they would. Why? I smiled through my tears. Because we're human. Because sometimes the most logical thing to do is something completely illogical. Because love is stronger than survival. The Zephyrian's form pulsed once, twice, then began to change color, shifting from clear crystal to a warm golden hue. We have made our decision, it said. Humanity will be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council. My knees nearly buckled with relief. Thank you. Do not thank us yet, the Mokari Prime warned. Your species will be tested. The universe will present you with choices that challenge your capacity for these beautiful illogical decisions. We'll be ready. I said, and I meant it. Furthermore, the Vorthik added, we have a proposal. The Vega Cascade requires intervention within 72 hours. Will humanity honor its word? I looked up at the council, feeling the weight of 8 billion lives in my answer. Admiral Chun, I said into the communicator, we need volunteers for the Vega mission. Actual volunteers. This is real. Valentina, came the reply. We've been ready since the moment you started talking. The first wave ships are already en route. I closed my eyes, feeling a pride so deep it hurt. How many? All of them. Every single volunteer. They said if one goes, they all go. The chamber erupted in what I could only describe as alien amazement. Lights flashed, energy fields fluctuated, and crystalline forms pulsed with colors I'd never seen. Impossible, the Zephyrian whispered. No logical species would ... We're not logical, I said, opening my eyes. We're human. And that's when I understood why the universe had chosen me. A former exotic dancer from Miami, with a body that had been both blessing and curse, to save my species. It wasn't despite my background, but because of it. I'd learned to read people, to understand what they needed, to give them something real in a world full of fakeness. I'd learned that sometimes the most valuable thing you can offer isn't what makes sense, but what makes a difference. The council began to disperse, each member returning to their ships, their worlds, their logical lives. But they carried with them something they'd never experienced before, the knowledge that somewhere in the universe, there were beings who would choose love over logic, hope over despair, sacrifice over survival. As I stood alone in the chamber, still wearing my red dress and smeared makeup, I thought about Marcus's daughter, about little Emma with her flowers, about 200 million humans racing towards certain death to save strangers. And I realized that maybe, just maybe, being human wasn't something to be ashamed of. Maybe our beautiful illogic was exactly what the universe needed. The stars were waiting for us now, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. The universe had a sense of humor after all. It had chosen the most unlikely ambassador to prove that love, not logic, was the most powerful force in existence. And damn if we weren't going to prove it right. 3 months later, the Vega Cascade was successfully contained. Of the 800,000 humans who volunteered for the mission, 347 survived. When asked why they had volunteered for certain death, the most common answer was, because someone had to, and we were honored to be chosen. The Galactic Council has since established the human protocol for situations requiring illogical solutions. Humanity is now recognized as the emotional intervention specialists of the Galaxy. Emma survived her cancer treatment. She still sends flowers to visiting alien ships. And Valentina Rodriguez was appointed as the first human ambassador to the Galactic Council. She still wears red dresses to every meeting, because sometimes the most logical thing to do is something completely illogical.